Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Windows Wednesday. My name is Kayla Cinnamon. I'm a program manager for Windows Terminal as well as the developer experience on Windows. And we have a very exciting guest here today. And we're also talking about one of my favorite tools. It's PowerToys, and Clint is here to talk to us all about it. So welcome, Clint, to the show.
Hi, thank you. How are you doing today?
I am waking up.
That's why we have coffee. One thing I do want to remind everyone is it's very early in the morning here. I have two little ones. They have yet to actually wake up, so maybe during this broadcast you might hear some thunder rumbling through, and that's just my 2 and 4-year-old. So
Awesome.
just making everyone aware.
Sweet. So let's talk about PowerToys. So what do you do? What do you do for PowerToys first
What
off?
do you do around here? Well, I hand my papers to another person. So I'm kind of the lead for PowerToys. My job is to kind of help figure out what our core team does and build and make sure that what is released is solid, stable. We know what's going out there. We're proactively making sure everything is signed, proactively making sure everything is tested, proactively making sure the features that go in make sense for the areas and that we have them supported. So if there is a bug, we know how to fix it. So we can't just accept everything because of that, because then it becomes unsustainable for us. And it gets very, very hard then to actually build out new stuff. So very happy in the .55 timeframe, which will probably be released end of January, maybe early February. We
Okay.
will be introducing 2 new PowerToys.
Can you tell us more?
Yes, I can. So they are a File Explorer add-on. So we are adding preview capability to 150 file types. Those file types are developer related. So C++, Rust, C#, XML, JSON. If something is relevant to you and you are a developer, in theory, this should be able to enable file preview for them. We are leveraging the Visual Studio extension. The Visual Studio Code Monaco engine, which is like their view engine, as the editor. For the preview pane. And the next utility is a accessibility feature that adds a crosshair over your mouse
Oh
and helps
yeah.
move it. It's for a set of disabilities where, like, imagine you're looking through a straw.
Yeah.
And like you can't figure out where your mouse cursor is because it's a little itty bitty thing. And by having that X on your screen, the crosshairs, it gives you a waypoint, a wayfinding mechanism. Because then all you need to do is scan down. Great, you got your horizontal line, and then you just follow the horizontal line, and then you find the vertical, and boom, there's your mouse.
Cool. Yeah, that definitely sounds extremely helpful, especially for those with limited sight or like even large monitors or like multi-monitor. That's super helpful for sure. So are you able to show us anything like demo style?
I can. So I have on the screen, you'll see it's version 0.0.1. This is actually a 55 build that was off our test farm to validate, do we build, do we sign, and just having admin rights. I was like, yes, I will take that build off the farm. So here you can see our settings app. So you can see all the different utilities in it. And the nice thing with PowerToys is no matter what you want, we do our best to try to empower you as the user to make it your own. So let's say you take Color Picker here and you don't like our default shortcut. You just click it and change it. So let's say I want to change it to, I don't know, this is probably a horrible key to pick, but Control-Shift-Z, you can do it. I personally have learned muscle memory to window key Shift-C for Color Picker, and I'm going to save that. So now if I hit that keystroke, you can see Color Picker on screen, and I click it, and it saves it to my clipboard.
Yeah, Color Picker is my favorite. I know it's really small and people might think like, oh, like why would you use color picker? But instead of having color picker, I would take a screenshot of my screen, paste it into Paint, and then select the hex code from there, and then have to copy the hex code out of
It's
Paint.
not. It's even worse. It wasn't the hex code in Paint. You get the
Oh,
RGBs
RGB.
individuals, and that then you have to convert to
Yes.
hex.
Yes. Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, because then I had to pull up an RGB to hex converter online and then convert it, and then I could use the hex code. And what's funny is I was using it for our GitHub issues, our GitHub labels on Terminal. They're all rainbow, and I wanted to be very specific about the rainbow colors, and it was just such a pain without the color picker because we didn't have color picker at the time. So
Yep.
that's my favorite tool, for sure.
And the great thing here is, let's say your default copy value, you don't like hex.
Mm-hmm.
We support a ton of different values here. So
Nice.
you let's say you want vec4, great, or a decimal value or something else. They're all supported. You can turn them on and off for what's visual as well. It's designed to be very powerful and very flexible for you, the end user. Going back to customizability, another fan favorite is fancy zones. So for those who don't know what fancy zones is, it's our PowerToys' kind of layout system. So let's go pull up your favorite thing, Terminal. So I'm just going to pull up a terminal, which ironically, so let's say I just want it there. It snaps there. Let's say I want it to go to 2 zones. I'm just holding down Shift and Control. I can let go, and it does a custom snap. If we wanted to, we can pull up the editor and create your own layout to whatever you want. The layout I just showed is a variant of the priority grid, and that's because I literally put my terminal in the upper right-hand window. You might go, hey, Clint, your terminal looks really small in that. That's because for the screencast, we brought my resolution down from 4K to 1080, but it is typically a roughly normal size when we do use that.
Yeah.
There's then going back to customization, we have it's a plugin system. PowerToys Run was based on the Walks open source project, and so that by default is a plugin system. So we're keep on going with that metaphor. So we have a bunch of different ones, and I've made it my own. All these different utilities are great. The plugins for me, my daily run or usage, I don't really use the navigation plugin, so I have it off. Same thing with services. Now, let's say if I wanted to run the registry plugin, I can just make sure that it's not in my global results, and it won't come up on the daily average. I personally don't hit my registry that often, so I just have it off by default, though.
So, question. When you said not in your global results, does that mean it will only show up when you type the colon key as the start?
It will only show up if you use the action key. So like a great example here is web searching. Is right now it's saying, show my global results. But if I uncheck that, I have to hit the direct activation key, which for web searching is question.
Gotcha. Okay. Why do you have Windows Terminal disabled? That's my favorite plugin.
I know it's your favorite plugin. I know that you're near and dear to your heart on this. However, I typically have my terminal window open, and I also typically have my I pretty much live in PowerShell, so I don't have that many profiles. So for me, it's not a plugin I use, but for people like you or others, this could be a great plugin. It's just like I keep on going back to making it your own. This is me making it my own.
Okay. Well, if you already have terminal open, I'll let it slide.
Let me go close your favorite toy.
You're killing me this morning, Clint.
I know. So other favorite utilities to me, these are a bunch of new ones. This is kind of like the last couple releases I would call a suite of utilities we've just added in. The first one is Find My Mouse. So if you double click Control, you'll see, hey, here's your mouse cursor. So we added in a bunch of new options here. You can make your spotlight radius a lot tighter, and it's just one of those cool little utilities that helps you find your mouse especially when you have such a giant monitor. So
Yeah.
for me, I have dual 27s that I run at 4K at 100% DPI. So I occasionally lose my mouse. And this, because of the action, it moves your eye, you see the motion, and that helps draw you in. The next utility that we added in is part of, I would call kind of like a presentation tool suite, is if I hit Shift Win H, and I start clicking, you can see my mouse is yellow. And that's because I'm holding down my left cursor. My left mouse button. If I hold down my right, it turns it blue.
Huh.
So now as a end user, you can see what's going on. You can see my motion of when I'm clicking, when I'm not. This is like certain screen recording tools such as Screen to GIF, which is open source and fantastic. Do this for screen capturing. So it helps the user understand the presenter clicked and did an action. It's also an accessibility feature. Some people might not realize they clicked, and by doing this, they can see visually that they clicked. I'm going to go quickly turn that off. And then lastly, this is what we're adding in 55. It's the mouse point hair crosshair feature. We partnered directly with the accessibility team, and they saw our other two utilities and were like, hey, this is really cool. Could you help enable this? And we said, yes, we can. Because it's the same engine. All we're doing is just kind of swapping out a little bit here and there. And what this does is help solve a disability for people with a sight impairment, where it's kind of like looking through a straw. So if you go like this, you see basically a very small portion of the screen. They're still highly functional individuals, but the problem that they'll face is to find your cursor, it becomes very hard. So going back to, I lose my cursor with my monitors. They'll lose their cursor, and it's very hard for them to find it, and they have to scan. There's some utilities out there as well. But this tool we're building in, so I'm just going to enable it really quick, and you can see it goes over. And now going back to that concept of a straw, all I have to do really quick is scroll up. Okay, now I see my horizontal bar, and then I can go left. Oh, I hit my monitor barrier. Okay, let's go the other way. And now I found my cursor. So with a couple quick little motions, we've introduced wayfinding to my mouse. And then I now have my mouse. I hit my cursor, the shortcut again, and it's gone. Now, if you don't like the red with the white border, you can go into customizations and tweak all these settings to make it your own also. So this is a brand new utility that we're adding in 0.55, and hopefully it helps out a lot of people. We'd also really love feedback on, and I know the accessibility team would love feedback on it as well. Next, one that I'm personally super excited for is we've added in dev preview types. So we're leveraging the Visual Studio Monaco engine, which is their kind of their view engine, if you will, in Visual Studio Code, which is open source. And that lets us then in File Explorer view different file types like CS code, C#, C++, Python, Rust, et cetera, et cetera. There's 150 different file types now that we've just enabled. So here you can see my entryway console I'm working on. It's a JPEG, exactly what you'd expect in your preview pane, is just being able to view it. But let's say C++. We're loading, and now you can see that file. You can quickly scan it and find it and see what you want.
Very cool.
Let me go make this a smidge bigger. So let's say program files. This is a C# file. You can go in and scroll through and see everything you need.
Nice.
Now, for Markdown files, we do actually have two different ways you could do this. You could either view the Markdown raw, or what we're actually having to set up to do is actually render the Markdown.
Nice. I was just going to ask if you could render it or if it's raw.
I'm not 100% sure, honestly, if we can do that override of viewing it raw right now. I'm pretty sure we intentionally said you get Markdown rendered.
Mm.
But right now, this is we render that. The other thing is SVGs. You can see right here, we've provided an SVG thumbnail, and we also render it here. So
Nice.
the great thing here is we go pull up good old fashioned run prompt really quick. Let's say we want to just change the color here. Change it to now green. You can see both updated.
Oh, nice.
And then a Pedro Lamas community member helped add in G-code and STL file rendering. So here, let's go find everyone's favorite thing, Clippy. So we have G-code previewing and thumbnail generation, along with STL thumbnail and G-code preview pane enablement here. So that was an example of a community-driven solution for preview pane and for thumbnails. So this is something that we probably as a dev team may not have built out, but a community member said, "Hey, this is cool. I need it." And it's a very clear power user scenario. So we're like, yes, let's do it.
Yeah, no, this is super helpful. So you install PowerToys, and this is automatically enabled. I mean, the new file types is coming like in the next update, but
yes,
for SVG, which I have right now, you install PowerToys, and then it's on by default, and then I just open File Explorer, and then it's just there.
Yep.
Nice.
Yes.
Nice.
There is a OneDrive quirk right now where if it's on OneDrive, the thumbnails don't render. We're working on a fix for that. There is an open bug on it. So we are there. Things are complex, surprisingly, is typically the thing. So we did find a scenario where SVG won't work, but it's typically when you interact with the OneDrive folder, and we're going to proactively solve that bug. There is actually one more favorite new utility that came out. It's called Always on Top. Now, what Always on Top is basically it makes your window on the topmost Z band. So if I go and just enable it, so I'm going to go hit Control and T, and this is a command that you can change. You can make a cool little noise so you know it's enabled. If I go hit it again, it disables. But now if I try to click my settings app, it's not on top. It won't gain the ZMOS where the File Explorer window will. You can set up multiple. So if I want my notepad on top, I can do that also. Now, you might ask, when is this important? Yeah. Well, if you're constantly dealing with files and you want to keep that Explorer window always on top, or you have references or super important notepad, such as this wonderful red SVG file explorer, those things you want on top, and you want them there all the time. And then as a end user, you know what works best for your flow, and this just helps you make your flow you. And that's where we're helping make Windows be the most powerful, efficient operating system for you.
Cool. I dig it.
And also, if you saw the blue border, you can change it to be whatever you want.
Yeah.
So if you wanted a custom color, you can do a custom color. You can change the thickness. You can change the sound. You can even exclude apps where you don't intentionally want them to always be on top.
Oh, interesting.
Yep.
Cool. So you mentioned, trying to make Windows the most productive it can be. And this is Windows Wednesday. So I want to talk more about how has PowerToys helped Windows itself?
So I don't think we really talked about this publicly. One of the things that I helped do for Windows 11 is I helped co-PM some of the virtual desktop improvements. So those were heavily influenced by PowerToys issues, PowerToy feedback, along with Windows feedback through Feedback Hub. And the reason why I bring that up is we use that data to help influence what things get built out, what things get built by understanding customer pain and customer needs and scenarios, those things we can help start building cases and get data and telemetry to help validate, is this a good idea? Like literally what we talk about in with, like you go to a science class, you have a hypothesis.
Yeah.
Well, we come up with a hypothesis or hypothesis. Let's go with hypothesis because it sounds cool. We come up with a hypothesis, and from there we set out to validate it. And sometimes the validation doesn't resonate. It doesn't solve the end-to-end problem. And that's okay. Failure is totally an acceptable option. And then you go back to the drawing board, recreate it, come up with something better. You learn from the things that didn't make it resonate, and you solve the customer problem. And that's one of the things that PowerToys helps do. We helped docking, undocking. So fancy zones with Windows 10, if you kind of dock and undock, sometimes the windows get jarbled. Right. And fancy zone users kind of had that a little bit more exemplified because of some of the things that fancy zones has to do to help rearrange itself and actually realize, oh, I'm on this monitor. There's a bug in DisplayPort where DisplayPort occasionally doesn't register itself or has a delay registration. And while our fancy zones will immediately go say, tell me your monitor ID, and the monitor ID hasn't really come up yet. So we then reset your layout because we don't know what monitor you're on. We assume it's a new monitor. So Windows 11, we helped partner with the teams and get that fixed. There's a video conference mute. We introduced this idea at the beginning of COVID. And this was a way that we all could help quickly unmute and mute your microphone and your video. And we helped partner with the Windows 11 team, Mike Ajax, and he helped build the button in the taskbar. So we helped provide data to that team to push forward because we had already built out the working example and said, hey, yeah, please go here, please leverage. Some of the mouse utilities, we're partnering with the accessibility team to help push those forward. And I'd love to see what people think about getting those put into Windows as well. We're just trying to help out any way humanly possible.
Yeah. I think that's really cool too, because PowerToys started back in like Windows 95 and it was still called PowerToys. Yep. And I think we were chatting about this before the show. A lot or almost all of the PowerToys from Windows 95 are now parts of Windows like built in. So it's cool that like motivation and that incentive to keep doing these things and help the like base Windows is still alive today, decades later in the same project, which is really cool.
Like a great example of one of those things where back in like Windows 95, not everyone, I think, without actually having data in front of me, I'm willing to bet most computers didn't have a CD-ROM drive. And why that's relevant is there was a utility, 99% sure, that helped auto launch CDs. So if you put in a CD or a CD as an application, would auto launch it. This now you do it and it's like, yeah, of course my CD would launch. But back when Windows 95 was being developed and everything, that wasn't a thing. That concept didn't exist. Like no one had CD-ROM drives, so it was so bleeding edge. And now you think about it, and you're like, yeah, well, why wouldn't that do that?
Right.
And that was one of those PowerToy utilities that then made it back into Windows. Most utilities from 95 and XP PowerToys era made it back into Windows, and now they just become part of the normal day-to-day that everyone uses, and they just don't think about it. But I kind of view it as like Velcro. Velcro was, NASA used left and right and became a normal thing into daily use. Same thing with like memory foam. Memory foam was helped co-developed by NASA. now you get a memory foam mattress.
Yeah.
Back
Yeah.
then it didn't exist. So it's you build something for a very targeted purpose, and then it becomes part of the daily use, daily life.
Yeah. I think that's awesome. So are you able to talk about upcoming things you're thinking about? Like anything that's on the repo that's allowed?
Okay.
Yeah.
There are one thing that's big top of mind right now is supporting ARM64.
Nice.
And I know there's Mary, who's a fantastic lady, and I'm super afraid to pronounce her last name because I'm going to butcher it. But she's been pushing us hard to get ARM64. I know you're on an ARM64 device.
Yep.
And PowerToys, in its nature, because we take a lot of open source and are very scrappy, some of our utilities are a bit hard to get onto ARM, and we've taken certain dependencies to get certain things to work. So our settings app, for instance, uses a XAML island, and that is one of the things that is kind of right now causing a how do we do this and move forward. We know how to move forward, but we need WinUI 3.1 out because that will give us multi-window and elevation support. We need elevation support because there are certain things like video conference mute here. If I were to turn it on, it requires admin to actually enable the video conference stuff. There are certain things with File Explorer add-ons where it may require admin rights. Here, I think I'm running as admin, so it's not going to be that big of a thing. So that's why certain warnings aren't being shown right now. So all these things require us to act certain ways, and if the feature isn't there, we can't push forward. So the 0.53 release, we did .NET 5, or maybe it's the 55 release. Sorry, I think actually it's a 55 release. This upcoming release will upgrade the entire, anything that's running .NET is now going to run .NET 5. And then come next release, we're going to actually do .NET 6. Going from Core 3.1 to 5 is a big jump. Going from 5 to 6 is a small jump for code bases. So it's easier to do that. There was other things that made us not just do the straight 6 jump. So all these things are building up to get us to ARM64. We think we know all the dependencies at this point. It initially was an onion peeling exercise to figure out what would break, what wouldn't break. So we think we're near the end. So that's big top of mind there. And we're going to get performance gains from going to like .NET 6 for a bunch of these things. Even going to .NET 5, we'll see performance gains.
Sweet.
Next is we're thinking about what are some of the kind of things in the operating system that we could maybe make better. So one of the things that I know I continually hit up is Event Viewer and maybe like the environment variables. Like, could we do better? Could PowerToys create something that not just makes it prettier, but makes it better? And we would love to better see if people have interest in that. Is this something you'd want us to build out? Like I can tell you there's a bunch of different ways I personally would use Event Viewer, but I want to understand not just your Kayla, but the community, what their viewpoint is, what things they want, because that will help us better understand, is this something we should probably build out? I think it would be really cool to actually get a rejuved, better experience here. But going back to community-driven, community-led, community-forward, that would be one of those things. And then another utility that we really, really are interested in is a screen measuring tool. So there's an open source tool called Ruler, and we reached out to the person and they said, yes, you bring it into PowerToys, but and then we want to make it more, I would say, Windows 11 look feel and probably fix some things in it. But it's all about going from like, what is the gap between, let's say, the version here on my screen is the bottom of the version to the top of the admin mode. What is the gap between there? Or, what is the gap between this upper shadow and that shadow? Like all these little things where you're like, what is that space? And going back to, you were talking about color picker, like
Yep.
you have to then take a screenshot, go into like Photoshop, get the ruler, or you do what I do, which is actually you get like the lasso, you start kind of like 1 pixel, 2 pixel, 3 pixel, or I've even been known to grab the pencil and do pixel, 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 pixel to count. I'm not proud of that, but it works. So these are all things to like, as a dev, to help or a designer, how do you make yourself more productive? If I can just do it on the screen, that makes it very, very, very powerful. I know some of these utilities exist in the web space, but they are locked only to the web browser. We're talking about making it just agnostic to your screen.
Yeah. So, I know I personally would use that, especially because with Terminal, when we upgrade like WinUI versions, sometimes the spacing changes or like, buttons look different or whatever. And then we're sitting there staring at it in a Teams meeting. We're like, I think that looks taller. And then, I go into Figma and then fill in, like, I draw a line, and then Figma will tell me how many pixels high that line is. So I +1 the screen measurer for selfish reasons. But you're right. There's definitely like web versions, but not desktop versions, which I think is the killer.
Yeah, and some of these exist on other platforms, and they even exist on Windows. And I think one of the key things for like PowerToys is our goals are to help unblock and not do everything under the sun. So there are some great, fantastic utilities out there that do more. All great. If those features and those utilities do more and they're unblock you, use those utilities. I can't stress that enough. We are, everything is better together. There's a lot of stuff we just won't build in. So if like I said, if there's a utility out there that does something like a PowerToy utility and it does more, use that utility. So that's kind of our motto here. So if you look at like someone I just saw mention screen recording, if we were to build one, we built out a spec for it. Our spec is very bare bones. We're basically saying we will allow you to capture, trim start, trim end. We're good. And then you can export it, which for most scenarios, that's kind of what people want. And because we're a small team, like by keeping that scope small, it helps us build out stuff as well. So yeah.
Cool. Well, I know we're at time, but this has been a really awesome episode, and there's stuff in PowerToys I didn't even know was there, so that was really helpful doing the walkthrough too. And, learning about the new ARM64 stuff, and then maybe some new Windows improvements, and maybe a screen measurer.
Maybe, so, I don't know.
Who knows?
So we just covered a bit of our utilities. A bunch of the utilities are actually written by the community, so I cannot stress that enough. Like, I heart the community on this. It's PowerToys does have a couple devs on it, but the community is really what helps PowerToys become like this fantastic thing. I cannot believe my daily job is to help this out.
That's awesome. Love to hear it. Sweet. Well, thanks for coming on. We'll have to have you on when there's another big PowerToys release, and we'll talk more in this space.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Kayla.
Cool. Thanks, everyone.